Tonight, a tentative deal with Ford Motors keeps thousands of auto workers on the job.
And we believe we will change some lives with this agreement.
The latest from the bargaining table between Ford and Unifor, what it could mean for the rest of Ontario's thousands of auto workers next in line for a new contract.
You know, my child was affected by it. I had to speak to her a few times about it, and she was getting like,
Plus, shock at an Oshawa school after a police officer tasered a 12-year-old girl. How Durham police are now reviewing the in-class use of force.
I'm not taking a shower after this.
Why not?
He gave me a handshake.
And an all-star roster at a downtown Toronto park will explain what players from the Leafs and the Raptors were helping shoot for. Good evening, I'm Chris Glover. We begin tonight with breaking news from the bargaining table. Late this evening, the union representing 5,600 auto workers says it has reached an agreement with Ford Motors. A last-minute offer by the automaker yesterday extended negotiations into today. And just a couple of hours ahead of tonight's new deadline, there was word of a tentative deal that it had been reached. Anam Khan is covering the breaking news story for us tonight from outside the Sheraton Hotel in downtown Toronto. Anam, that is where these negotiations have been ongoing. What is the union saying tonight about the agreement?
So Unifor says the tentative agreement is being fully endorsed by its bargaining team. It says it meets all of the concerns raised by its members. And this deal is not just affecting the 5,600 workers at Ford. The union said it solidifies the foundation for future contract negotiations for auto workers in Canada. Major labor action for auto workers first started south of the border last week. A strike like never before. Thousands of workers from the big three automakers in the U.S. staged walkouts, calling out corporate greed, while they said their paychecks weren't keeping pace.
Give us our cost of living, because, nowadays, your check doesn't go very far.
5,600 workers at Ford Motors, many from Windsor and even Oakville, were told to be ready to strike as tough negotiations labored on in downtown Toronto. Their 4-year contract with Ford officially came to an end at 11:59 Monday night. That was the initial deadline for a deal. But last night, no deal was reached. At the 11th hour, an offer from Ford. Interesting enough, Unifor agreed to a 24-hour extension, adding to days of tension for workers watching from the sidelines.
It's always a trying time every contract year. A lot of anxiety about, are we going to be able to get a good product? Are we going to be going on strike for long term?
Windsor auto worker Darby McCloskey was on strike as a young employee with Ford back in 1990. He's been anxious watching these negotiations, waiting for the union to find a deal that improves pensions, wages, and stability amid a transition to electric vehicles. And a deal came through tonight.
We have reached a tentative agreement with Ford Motor Company that has been unanimously and proudly endorsed by our entire Master Bargaining Committee. We're very proud of the work that they've done over these many, many weeks, and now we will take it to our members with that endorsement later this week to get ratified.
And the agreement wasn't easy. Experts say the auto sector has rapidly changed over the last decades, especially in terms of technology. U of T Labor Studies Prof. Rafael Gomez says the complexity of all that is what led to the difficult negotiations.
So this is not easy. It's negotiation over a long list of issues that couldn't get settled during COVID and which now are trying to all get wrapped up. And so it's in both parties' interests, I think, to get a deal and not have a labor walkout.
Unifor represents not just Ford workers, but some at Stellantis and General Motors, totaling some 18,000 people. The union says the deal will serve as a blueprint for those thousands of other workers. The provincial government was watching this deal very closely, even assigning a mediator to help at the bargaining table. Tonight, a statement from the Ministry of Labour, Immigration, Training and Skills Development says, our priority is the stability of the auto industry and the nearly 100,000 workers that are directly employed in Ontario's automotive manufacturing sector. So this is still a tentative agreement. It still has to go through the ratification process. In the near future, they'll be presenting the agreement to Ford workers and they will vote, and only then it will be passed.
Anam Khan reporting live for us on this breaking news in downtown Toronto. Thank you, Anam. And developing news tonight out of Mississauga as well. A motorcyclist is in life-threatening condition after a crash near Highway 403. Police say a motorcycle and a car collided at Dundas and Vega Boulevard just before 9. The driver of the motorcycle was rushed to hospital with critical injuries, and the car was badly damaged, but there's no word if the driver was injured. Dundas is closed in both directions between Highway 403 and Ridgeway Drive for this ongoing police investigation. In Oshawa, Durham police are conducting a review after an officer tasered a 12-year-old girl yesterday. Police say the girl attacked 3 staff members and a fellow student at Sir Albert Love Catholic School. And it was during one of the alleged assaults on a staff member that an officer tasered the child. Ali Chiasson has the latest.
Teachers, students, and parents of the Sir Albert Love Catholic School community are shaken by what happened yesterday.
You know, my child was affected by it.
This mother wanted to protect her kid's identity since confiding in her about what they saw unfold, including the initial alleged incident where the 12-year-old student struck her teacher with an object.
So my understanding was a water bottle. There was a steel water bottle.
Officers located that student in a classroom. When officers initially located her, she was armed with scissors. They immediately tried to de-escalate the situation. They requested that she drop the scissors, to which she complied with.
Durham police say she bolted through a side door and into the schoolyard.
She was violently assaulting a staff member of that school, and to stop that assault, the officer made the decision to deploy his conducted energy weapon.
A taser on a 12-year-old girl.
I know there's a lot of focus on the 12-year-old, but more of the focus needs to be on the behavior, and the behavior that was being displayed at the time led the officer to make the decision to deploy his taser.
In Ontario, it's stated that police should avoid using tasers on elderly people, pregnant women, and children. But it's ultimately up to the officer's discretion. Durham Catholic District School Board declined to comment on the police use of force, opting only to say that safety is a priority and that professional support staff are available to anyone who may be experiencing heightened emotions at this time. This parent wonders what supports were there for the student who allegedly committed these assaults.
I think more teachers should have been around her if there was something going on traumatically. Calm her down, talk to her first.
The girl was charged with 4 counts of assault and 1 count of mischief. She has since been released from police custody. A police review into the officer's use of force is underway. Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Oshawa.
12 degrees and clear as we look live at the city tonight. Let's bring in Colette Kennedy now. And Colette, it's time certainly to have those heavy sweaters on.
Yeah, that's right, Chris. At this time of year, so many things we need to organize between the closets and what layers we want now as we're approaching fall with some of these cooler nights and earlier mornings. And also the bedding, like it depends. Are you cracking the windows or not? Oh, so much to do. Frost advisories that we do have in place, not for the city, but not that far away. Northern Durham County towards Uxbridge, and then you see it travels northward, north and east from there. So some cooler readings, frost potential through that area. And we're looking at a little bit of patchy frost getting at least closer to the city. Now, this morning we had some single digits for those overnight lows we started out from. And as we warmed up quite nicely, even Chatham-Kent putting a 20 on the board by the time we were to the lunch hour, and then seeing that 20 show up in Toronto and even some low 20s into southwestern Ontario as the day wore on. Extra cloud cover pushing through southwestern Ontario. It's really going to have a hard time making it to the GTA. But late day tomorrow, we could bring in a few extra clouds. 8 overnight tonight for the low. And Chris, the high tomorrow, a little warmer than today, 22.
All right, looking good. Thanks, Colette. Nice weather today for the International Plowing Match that's underway near Orangeville. It's a big annual event in rural Ontario and a chance for provincial politicians to get face-to-face with farmers. But with the ongoing Greenbelt land swap controversy, there were questions about what kind of reception Premier Doug Ford would receive. Our Queen's Park reporter Lorenda Redekop went to find out.
It was all smiles from Premier Doug Ford along the parade route. This year, the plowing match is being held in a PC riding, home of Health Minister Sylvia Jones, though people come from across the province, and not everyone was happy to see him ride by.
It's pathetic what he's done to our province, trying to steal that green belt, making his buddies rich.
It was depressing. I was very hard to stand here and not flip him the bird.
Have you been a PC supporter though in the past?
In the past, I have been, yes.
The reason for her change of heart? The Greenbelt controversy. 2 legislative reports found the government's land swap plan was biased, benefiting a few developers whose land values will skyrocket by allowing housing. As Ford went through the parade, he sounded confident he has support here.
They love us, the farmers. No one's done more for farmers than our party has.
Doug Ford.
Later, he told farmers his party is on their side.
We're always going to have the agriculture sector, the food sector's back, but most importantly, we're going to have the farmers' backs.
Years ago at this event, former Premier Kathleen Wynne faced the crowd during the height of the gas plant scandal.
It's very important that we understand that things like electricity costs, and we are working to bring those electricity costs down.
The people that are out there day in and day out.
Today, the Premier's reception was mixed, with some boos among the cheers, though in a crowd with politically aligned supporters on both sides.
Thanks, guys.
As Ford left, hustled out by security, I asked his response to some former supporters upset about the Greenbelt.
People who voted for...
We expanded it 2,000 acres. Thank you.
If he thinks that that answer is sufficient, it's absolutely not. And that's why people are outraged.
And I know, and you know, that those farmlands are at risk.
I had to address the elephant in the room, and I think the Premier's doesn't understand the level of anger.
Ford didn't fare any better later when politicians pretend to be farmers, coming in last in the plowing competition. Starting next week, the Premier will be facing a much different crowd. The legislature is back in session, and no doubt all 3 opposition parties will bring up the Greenbelt controversy. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Dufferin County.
Tomorrow is expected to be a day filled with protests across the country, along with several in our region at some schools and a large one planned at Queen's Park. The main protest is called the 1 Million March for Children, and organizers of that original protest say they are trying to safeguard children from gender ideology teachings and indoctrination at schools. But counter-protesters argue they are spreading anti-LGBTQ messages of hate and will put queer kids and their families at risk. So today, in the lead up to those protests, tomorrow, school boards across the GTA have put out strikingly similar statements in solidarity with LGBTQ kids and their families. Toronto's board writing ahead of these planned demonstrations, we want to make it unequivocally clear that the TDSB stands with our trans, two-spirit, and non-binary students, staff, and families, and we support everyone's human rights and expression of gender. And already this week, 3 CUPE offices in London were plastered with these hands off our kids stickers. The union represents frontline education workers and says it has provided these images of the vandalism that appeared Monday night to the London Police Service. CUPE says it will not tolerate any attempt to intimidate education workers as they seek to provide a safe environment for kids to express themselves regardless of gender identity. Education workers are also planning to stand in solidarity with the counter-protests planned for tomorrow across Ontario. Welcome back. A Toronto man has pleaded guilty to second-degree murder after poisoning a 3-year-old girl's cereal more than 2 years ago. 3-year-old Bernice Nantanda Wamala died in March 2021 after eating breakfast cereal that contained a controlled substance. An agreed statement of facts filed in court says the accused, a refugee claimant from Kenya, intended to kill Bernice's friend's mom. It says he was in love with the Toronto mother, but she rejected his advances. The accused is said to have stashed sodium nitrate in a cereal container in the woman's Scarborough apartment in early March. Bernice was brought over to the apartment by a friend of the woman on the evening of March 6th to be babysat along with the woman's daughter. The statement of facts says the accused knew the two toddlers were in the apartment and were at risk of injecting the poison, but didn't remove it. The two girls were fed the cereal and both fell ill. The woman's daughter survived while Bernice died in hospital on March 7th after suffering 2 seizures and 2 heart attacks. The accused was formally charged in June of that year. In Windsor today, the murder trial into the deaths of 4 members of a Muslim family in London heard from the defense today. The members of the Afzal family were killed when they were struck by a truck in 2021. The accused told police he ran them over on purpose and that it was, in his words, terrorism. Now, though, the defense is questioning whether the statement should be considered reliable. Thomas Dagla is following the court case.
At Nathaniel Veltman's trial, the jury has been shown hours of video of the accused in London police custody after his arrest in June 2021. That video has now been released publicly, showing Veltman sleeping on a concrete slab behind bars and being taken into an interview room to face questions twice, first at 1 a.m. and then again at 10 a.m. Defense lawyer Christopher Hicks has been highlighting to the jury the conditions of Veltman's detention. And the judge has told jurors the issue is not whether the police conduct was fair, but rather whether the conditions of Veltman's detention affected his state of mind or the reliability of his confession. Now remember, Veltman laid out to a detective that he was set on killing Muslims, and he explained how he'd become radicalized by consuming far-right conspiracy theories. The court has been hearing from Detective Micah Bordeaux, who interviewed the accused after the truck attack that killed 4 members of the Afzal family and seriously injured a young boy. The defense has pointed out the accused admitted to taking magic mushrooms and to feeling depressed and, in his words, gross before the attack, again calling into question whether Veltman is to be believed when he's heard confessing to police. In that video released by the court, Veltman is seen wearing a T-shirt with a spray-painted cross meant as a nod to religious wars between Christians and Muslims. An officer is also seen handling the helmet and bulletproof vest that the accused was wearing when he was arrested. Veltman has pleaded not guilty to terrorism-motivated first-degree murder and attempted murder. Testimony will continue later this week. Thomas Dagg, CBC News.
A couple of Toronto's sports superstars were in Alexandra Park this afternoon. Pascal Siakam of the Raptors and Leafs captain John Tavares made donations to help pay for a new basketball court there. Our Greg Ross has that story.
It's not every day that kids in Alexandra Park get to shoot hoops with Raptor star Pascal Siakam. Or try to score a goal in front of Leafs captain John Tavares. But that's exactly what happened in Alexandra Park today, leaving many kids who play here regularly a little starstruck.
I'm not taking a shower after this.
Why not?
He gave me a handshake.
That's just crazy. He's one of my favorite players, honestly, and it's just like insane that I get to see him up close.
Siakam and Tavares both donated money through their foundations to help revamp this basketball court.
They're all excited about it, and I can see the joy in their faces, and to me, that's what matters the most, to be honest.
Myself growing up in the GTA and understanding the importance of public spaces like these, and to team up with Pascal, Tridell, and all the partners here to do something for the community means a lot for me, my foundation, my family.
This neighborhood is where Tavares' father grew up, and it's the park that his uncle, who shares the same name, learned to play lacrosse. He went on to play 25 years of professional lacrosse and is currently coaching the Buffalo Bandits in the National Lacrosse League.
Every day in the summertime, my mom would just open the door, walk down the street, and hear the ball bouncing off the boards, and she knew I was there.
It comes full circle, and my uncle's a great example of someone who got the opportunity here at this park and in the community center here, helped fuel that passion of his love for lacrosse, and became one of the great athletes in our country.
And the hope is a new generation of kids will benefit in the same way with the help of high-quality facilities like this.
Being able to have that sense of community, basketball courts in the park, is always something that brings people together, and that's something that's really important to us.
Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
All right, let's get Colette in now. And Colette, it was another beautiful September day in the books.
Yeah, Chris, there's a lot of things you can do, accomplish outdoors when you have weather that you can count on and know that it's going to be drier, whether it's cutting the lawn. Yeah, we still have a little bit of that to go here as we're only just approaching the fall season. But really, we're finding things are just smooth sailing. And I know that's a motorized boat, but, I didn't have a sailboat, so you get the idea. Some small bumps in temperature. They're very small. Otherwise, we're really just looking at the temperatures being near seasonal or even a little bit above. And we do welcome fall in as we get to the weekend. So this Saturday, it begins. That temperature pattern, the warmth where we see the real oranges or the brighter oranges and reds, it tries to work its way towards the Great Lakes. And you can see kind of towards Friday, a little bit of activity there, but much of it, the warmest stuff is just knocking on our doorstep. So that's why we'll be mild, we'll be comfortable. Will be a little above seasonal, but any extreme heat is a little bit less likely. They've been experiencing that in the prairies. Today it was out of Saskatchewan, still there in Manitoba, but that kind of slides southward. So we get some extra cloud cover into southwestern Ontario. I think it will likely be dry. I mean, an isolated shower, you can see there, not out of the question, but most are going to experience dry skies or dry conditions. Into Thursday, we just kind of keep that risk, but that's all it is a slim risk, and it doesn't make its way further east than that. The overnight temperatures, I do want you to be aware that some of the models are really dropping these numbers down. Now, I'm not going as cool as this. For Toronto, I've got us at 8, but it's something to be aware of, and especially in these areas in here, you can kind of understand why the frost advisory I showed you earlier in the show is in place. 22 tomorrow, gorgeous, glorious Wednesday. Thursday, Friday, yeah, high pressure hanging in there, and we'll keep looking at the weekend. We always do, but latest model runs, Chris, are keeping it drier than it had looked earlier.
Fingers crossed. All right, thanks, Colette. Have a great night. And that is our show for you tonight. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you back here tomorrow night at 11. See you then.